Greetings, my name is Dr. Joy McNeil, and I am so excited to be with you today as I present to you Healthy Mind, Healthy You, 7 Solutions for Mental Wellness. Now, before I do anything, I gotta do something. Come on. Just work with me here. Gotta put on my hat, my special hat in honor of each and every, I gotta get it right, hold on. In honor of each and every individual who is living with lupus right now, who has been recently diagnosed with lupus, who is a caregiver of someone with lupus, and those who have lost a loved one to complications from lupus. I'm wearing my purple sequin hat in honor of you. Got to get it right now. Got to get it right. As a matter of fact, I think I'm going to change it to the other side. Bear with me just a minute. I'm going to change it to the other side. Looks snazzier on this side, wouldn't you say? So anyway, it's really a blessing to be here with you. I'm from Fayetteville, North Carolina. You can call me Dr. Joy. We'll get to be really good friends. Some of you will probably want to call me Joy once you get to know me. But we're going to be talking about mental health. Now, I love the fact that this lupus summit is virtual. In the time that we're in right now, in this time of COVID-19, which has produced a lot of fears and stress and uncertainty, something that a lot of you are already accustomed to. You've had to survive, and some of you are thriving even in the midst because you've already been resilient. You've already been resilient in the face of many different changes. But I want to say to you today, hopefully that you will learn some things as we move through, because having this virtual conference means that we get to connect and get information out to you so that you can continue to learn and continue to grow. And I'm so excited for you to do that. And so let's journey through as I talk with you about 7 solutions for mental wellness. Now, here's the thing. I'm going to leave some resources with you. And so one of the things that you may want to go ahead, there's going to be an activity sheet, and you may want to, as we go along, fill out that sheet and let me know. Communicate with me if you're able to fill all of it out, because there's some fill in the blanks, and it will help you as we move through this presentation. And so let me just tell you a bit about myself, and we'll talk about some of the other handouts later that I'll be providing for you, because who doesn't like free resources? So looking forward to that. But let me tell you a little bit about myself. I am a licensed clinical mental health counselor in private practice in Fayetteville, North Carolina. As we know, Fayetteville is adjacent to one of the largest military bases, and that's Fort Bragg, North Carolina. And so it's been my pleasure to work with all kinds of populations, from our soldiers and their families to civilians from ages 6 all the way up to the silver years. I have worked with many different populations, from trauma, those who have experienced deep, dark pain, those who are experiencing depression and anxiety, those with chronic illness, and even those with eating disorders. I've even worked with people on career performance. I currently present corporately to many different companies, and so it is a joy to be here with you, because I know it's like being here and being with family as we talk about this. I have enjoyed many years of going to lupus conferences, going to lupus summits, participating in the presentations, and now getting to present is a real honor. And so I want to thank the Lupus Foundation for giving me this opportunity. And thank you to Jenny Prince for reaching out to me. I certainly appreciate it. Let's go forward with Healthy Mind, Healthy You. And if you do have your resource handy, I want you to go ahead, pull out a pen or a pencil, and start to write along with me as I talk. Take notes. Sit with your family. Pull a friend in, even if it's virtually, so that they can watch with you as well. So let's go ahead and move forward. Okay, here we are. Healthy Mind, Healthy You. 7 solutions for mental wellness, presented by yours truly, Dr. Joy McNeil, licensed clinical mental health counselor and national certified counselor. Also certified in trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy and cognitive processing therapy, both that are for trauma as well. And so I'm also looking forward to talking with you all today about mental health, because our physical health is important, and a lot of us talk about physical health, especially if we have any sort of chronic illness, an autoimmune disease. And so we're focused on our physical health. Uncertain symptoms and signs come up, and that impacts not only your physical, but also your mind. And so I'm looking forward to talking with you today about all of this. Okay, so on the agenda of Healthy Mind, Healthy You is mental health definition and statistics. I'm going to talk about mental health. I'm going to talk and give you some statistics. I'm going to talk to you about how lupus can impact your mental health. We're going to harness the power of the mind-body connection. That means we're going to look at how the mind and the body are connected. And can't forget, we're also going to talk about solutions for mental wellness. I'm going to give you 7 solutions for mental wellness, because why not, right? 7 solutions, because I'm solution oriented. What about you? If you're solution oriented and you're a problem solver, then I hope you find this enriching, because I certainly found it enriching to talk with you about and to bring this and put this presentation together so I could talk with you about Healthy Mind, Healthy You. So first things first, before we do anything else, I want to do an emotional freedom exercise. Now, I didn't come up with this exercise. I cannot take credit for this exercise. This is an emotional freedom exercise first developed in the 90s by Gary Craig. And really what it is it's an opportunity for you to look at your anxiety. So first things first, I want you to, we're going to use a scaling exercise from 1 to 10, with 1 being I'm great, don't have any anxieties, I don't have any worries, I'm good, to 10 being my hair's on fire, I'm overwhelmed. Okay, so as we go about this, we're going to try to shrink anxiety, just even right now here in the moment. So what we're going to do is a form of a kind of psychological acupressure to kind of decrease your anxiety even right now. So what is your number between 1 and 10? Let's say right now mine is about a 3. I'm okay. I'm not really anxious as much as I'm excited about going through this presentation. But for you, wherever you are, if you're in your pajamas, if you are, watching this while you're drinking your coffee or you're having your dinner, you're watching the replays, whenever you have an opportunity, I want you to just take a moment to do this exercise with me. I think that you will find it amazing. And so now that you've rated your anxiety, I want you to do the following things, okay? I want you to, every time you tap your hand, so I've got my hand here, right? Look at my hand, all right? I want you to put yours up with me. And I want you to think about anxiety as you're tapping your hand 10 times. Now I want you to do the other hand. 10 times. Now I want you to focus under your eyes. Under your eyes. 10 times. I'm going to do one. Thinking about anxiety. Under your eyes. Now we're going to go under the arms. I wore the right dress for this. And then under the other arm. 1, 2. Wow. And then above your heart. 1, 2, 3. Now that we've done that process, I want you to rate your anxiety again. Has it gone down? If it hasn't, I'd like you to repeat it, right? So hands, right? Okay, I want you to repeat it. And then under the eyes, okay? Under the arms, okay? And then above your heart. And then assess your anxiety. And I want you to see if that number has lowered. I want you to really feel how you're feeling, right? I'm glad we're doing this exercise together because it's actually decreased my anxiety to almost a 1. I feel the difference. Now, if you don't, then one thing that you can do is you can close your eyes, okay? Just like I'm doing. And then I want you to open your eyes just like I'm doing. And then what I want you to do is I want you to look down and to the right. And then down and to the left. And then I want you to rotate your eyes one way. And then rotate your eyes the other way. And then I want you to hum. And for those of you who know either Happy Birthday or Old MacDonald, I'm going to hum Old MacDonald. You're just going to hum the first line. And then I want you to rate your anxiety again to determine if it has improved. This is an exercise that you can do wherever you are. If you're waiting for a doctor's appointment, waiting for your girlfriend or boyfriend or spouse to call you back or text you back. If you are feeling worried about any sort of results, maybe you're taking a test or an exam for school, I want you to think about doing this exercise to shrink anxiety. And again, this is the emotional freedom exercise. And I thought it would be a great way for us to start our discussion on mental health. So thank you for doing that with me. Let's go forward. Okay, what mental health is and what it is not. I want to explain this to you because I think a lot of people get mental health and mental illness completely wrong. They get them mixed up. They think that mental health, when we say mental health, is synonymous with mental illness. Totally not the same thing. Okay, so let's talk about what mental health is not. Sometimes it's easier to talk about what it's not than it is to give the definition first. So let's talk about what it's not. The first things first, it is not the absence of mental illness. So mental health does not mean that you don't have, it's not the absence of mental illness, okay? And so, your mental health, you can be healthy mentally. You can have a strong, powerful, dynamic mental health and still have or be diagnosed with depression or anxiety, right? It doesn't mean that you haven't been diagnosed or aren't experiencing symptoms. What that does mean is that you if you have a mental illness or have been diagnosed with a mental illness, doesn't mean necessarily that you have poor mental health. I want you to make sure that you get that in your mind. Also, mental health is not defined by a state of constant happiness. So just because you're happy all the time, or at least you're pretending to be happy all the time, or you feel numb even, it may be another emotion, does not mean that you are mentally healthy, okay? That's not what defines mental health. And so I hope that we're understanding that. And so mental health is also not synonymous with a life that is free from challenging days or weeks or months. Because we're going to have challenges, aren't we? Challenges come and challenges go. That's what I always say. And so even in some of your most difficult times, in your most difficult seasons, you saw them come and they may have lasted a while. Maybe you thought you never got out of it. That does not mean that it did not get better over time. And so that's something we're going to talk about more. So mental health is not a life that's free from challenging days and weeks. That doesn't mean you have poor mental health if you are having some challenges or facing challenges today. Okay? Now, I can also tell you, mental health is not having the answer to everybody's problem. I know everybody comes to you and you know it all. You have an answer, even with everything that you're going through. But guess what? It's not having the answer to everyone's problems and your own, because we tend to lean towards trying to help others, right? Give others advice, things like that. But the reality is that doesn't mean you're mentally healthy. And that's not what we're talking about when we talk about mental health. Okay? Mental health also is not being medication free. That's not a definition of mental health. People take medications, we all know, right? For many different reasons. If you're a lupus thriver, you may be taking medications for many different manifestations of lupus, right? And so being medication free on the other side of that is not a definition of mental health either. And one of the big things that I see as well is having a default answer to how are you? Oh, I'm great. I'm fine. I'm okay. That has become synonymous with a greeting in our society. And so mental health also is not having a default answer to how are you when someone asks you a question. Absolutely not. And so I want you to keep that in mind as well. And then also, I think this last one is very, very important. When you see your mental health declining, by the way, I have on purple nail polish too. When you see your mental health declining, it is not proof that you are weak, inferior, or have some sort of personality or character flaws. Okay? When you start to battle with anxiety, battle with toxic thoughts, that doesn't mean you're inferior. Having poor mental health or being diagnosed with a mental illness, even temporarily so, does not mean you are weak, incompetent, inferior, or worse than anybody else, right? And so that's very important. And I would also go a step further and say having or being diagnosed with lupus does not mean that you are weak, does not mean you're inferior, and does not mean that you deserved that. Okay? And so I want to make sure that that's clear. Let's talk about what mental health is, because that's what's most important right now. What mental health is. Mental health is emotional, psychological, and social well-being. It's a determinant of how we handle stress, relate to others, and how we make healthy choices. And no matter what age you are, whether you're young, you're Generation Z, your generation millennial, your generation X, your baby boomer. Mental health is important at every life developmental stage for every single generation. And it's important. We know it is. We look at even how 2020 is gone. A lot of us have experienced changes in our lives that we never even imagined, right? We've already, for many of you, you've experienced that anyway, but now on top of that, there's been another layer added with the advent of COVID-19 as well. Also, mental health is different from mental illness. And that's very, very important for us to know. Poor mental health and mental illness are not the same thing. A person can experience poor mental health and not be diagnosed with a mental health condition or mental illness, right? Such as a generalized anxiety. Conversely, a person diagnosed with a mental illness can experience periods of physical, social, and even emotional well-being and have increased mental health. So I want you to think about that as we move forward. Okay. Now, the stats on mental health, I know you see a lot of numbers up here, but I wanted to make sure to give you some statistics as well. An estimated 26% of Americans aged 18 and older, so that's 1 in 4 adults, suffer from a diagnosable mental health disorder in any given year. 1 in 4. 1 in 4. That says a lot. And so because there is what I consider a mental health crisis, I'm so glad we're getting to talk about it. You see the next number, 46%. 46% of Americans in this country, so almost half of Americans, will meet the criteria for a diagnosable mental health condition sometime in their life. Half of those that meet the criteria will also develop conditions or literally symptoms of it by the time they're 14. The next number is 24. Half of all mental disorders begin at 14, but guess what? 3/4 of mental health disorders begin at age 24. Now, I'm not telling you this because you need to go and Google all of your symptoms. I'm telling you this because I want to give you the statistics and let you know why we're talking about this. So this is important. And then also I want you to know only 41% of people who have a mental disorder, mental illness, are actually seeking professional services. And so that means a lot of people are not, for many different reasons. Think about reasons why you may hesitate to see a clinician, right? So, and I'm sure you've heard many people talk, or several people talk about, or make fun of therapists. And sometimes even on movies or in music, there seems to be a lot of emphasis on the heebie-jeebies of therapy. But when used properly with a ethical clinician, therapy is an excellent resource, and we'll talk about that more later. And so let's talk about the causes of mental illness, because there's no single cause for mental illness. There are a number of factors listed here that can contribute to risk for mental illness, and all of these come from the Center for Disease Control. So substance use, trauma, even your genetics, your DNA, right, can be a cause for mental illness. Ongoing medical conditions can create conditions that may give you symptoms of mental illness. Disconnection and isolation, like many of us may have experienced during this time of COVID-19, can also bring about feelings of sadness or guilt, grief of what was, right? And so there is a lot to think about. You know, when you have experiences with an ongoing autoimmune disease such as lupus, it can cause trauma. it can cause recurring feelings of decreased self-worth, of decreased self-confidence, and all of those things. So I want you to keep that in mind as we go forward. And so there's no single cause, and it doesn't make you weak to say, I need to talk to someone. Now, let's take a breath. Because in the midst of talking about mental health, I've also got to talk about lupus, right? Lupus and mental health. So lupus, neurological events, and mental health. You see the puzzle in the middle of the slide? I think this is very, very important. Because the puzzle pieces are sometimes what happens in our brain and our body. Everything just starts going haywire. For example, there are a lot of neurological events that researchers are beginning to look at. Headaches, confusion, fatigue, right? Not wanting to get out of bed, depression, seizures, strokes, all the things listed here. How might that impact your mental health? Because what we're seeing is that those with systemic lupus may have events that impact the brain. And so literally between 21 and 95% of patients, that's a large, broad statement, between 21 and 95% of lupus thrivers, lupus patients, those experiencing active lupus, may have some neurological manifestation of lupus. Headaches, confusion, and lupus fog is another one. So I think it's important to keep that in mind. What we mean when we say lupus fog, it means not being able to concentrate, having issues with memory, things such as that, difficulty expressing yourself. These cognitive issues also get worse during flares. So don't think you're going, quote, crazy. Sometimes the brain loses its ability for a temporary time to focus, to concentrate, to remember. And so those are also some things that can impact your mental health. You feel like you're not whole, feeling like you're not all there. Things that you used to be able to remember, you suddenly have trouble remembering. And so I want you to keep that in mind as well, and not just think, oh, I'm going crazy. Take your time. Take your time. Very important. And the last thing I want to talk about here before we go into some things is, what kind of marriage do you want between your mind and your body? Now, I just talked about some of the common lupus manifestations that happen within our central nervous system, and that can manifest as confusion, that can manifest as fatigue, can manifest in seizures, or stroke, or lupus fog. But what kind of marriage do you want? I love this picture of the brain and the body. The brain and the heart, they just got married, right? So cool. And this is basically highlighting the mind-body connection. So important. It's important to utilize the power of the mind and the body. Sometimes in a disease state, a person may focus solely on what their physical body is doing, right? And we tend to, when we've got a headache, what do we want to do? Find something to get rid of the headache. When our legs are swollen, what do we want to do? Put our legs up, figure out how to make the swelling go down. When we feel fatigued, what do we want to do? Get in the bed and get some additional rest, even when we want to be doing other things. So keep in mind the mind-body connection, and the fact that in mind-body belief system, the mind and body are not separately functioning entities. They work together. What impacts the mind impacts the body. What impacts the body impacts the mind. And so making sure to keep that also in your mind. The mind and emotions are viewed as influencing the body, and the body does the same. And so the goal of utilizing mind-body techniques, which I'm going to show you in my 7 solutions, is to make sure that you balance that stress response, that fight or flight, so that your mind and body work more in alignment, because that's important. When you get depressed, it can manifest physically. When you have physical symptoms, for example, lupus symptoms, then that can manifest within the mind. Even when we think negatively about things, it can manifest in the body. So keep that in mind. What you feel up here, you may also experience in your body and vice versa. So keep that in mind as we move forward. Now, before we get to the 7 solutions, I got to talk about the mental health and wellness barriers. I'm going to talk about the internal and the external barriers. The internal barriers being locus of control, self-sabotage, and the superhero savior complex. Yes, some of us, notice I said us, I didn't say you, us, experience things that get in the way internally of living our best, most vibrant life. Now, also there's external barriers. COVID-19 experiences, for example. We didn't know what was going on. We were uncertain about, state guidelines, about how it was going to impact our health, our family, all those things. Also, unhealthy connections, another external factor and barrier. And then also resource scarcity. Not having or lacking resources and support can lead to, barriers to mental health. So I want you to keep that in mind too as we go forward. We got to look at the barriers, because when I bring the solutions forward, you're going to know what I'm saying. You're going to really get how this all connects and works together. So just to be clear, we've talked a bit about what mental health is and is not. We've talked a bit about how mental health illness is defined. We've talked also about the mind-body connection. Now let's look at the barriers to mental health. Okay, so let's start with the internal, the locus of control. Now, when you hear control, you may be like me and you think Janet Jackson, Control, like one of her first songs. Lovely song, great song. I'm telling my age now, but that's not what control I'm talking about. I'm actually talking about a barrier to mental health wellness, and that barrier is just having an external locus of control. And that basically means that you believe that success and failure isn't in your hands. It's determined by external forces, things outside your control. That's why you may hear people say things like, oh, well, whatever happens, happens. Or this idea of learned helplessness, the feeling of powerlessness, and how our bodies learn, the feeling of resignation. That's what an external locus of control will do. That people believe that they have no impact over how they live and what happens to them. And so that's something to keep in mind as well, is think about how you function. Because when you have an external locus of control, then that means that you don't believe that you can rise. But when you have an internal locus of control, that means you see how your choices and behaviors and thoughts can impact the outcomes of your life. Sometimes it's difficult to get there when there's a lot coming at you. But I want you to keep in mind, this is very important. And thinking about how to get towards a more internal locus of control can benefit you greatly. Also, I've got to talk about self-sabotage. Got to talk about it. Self-sabotage is basically you getting in your own way. Whether it be engaging in behaviors that hold you back, being your own worst enemy and worst critic. Whether it be ignoring the signs that it's time for you to take a break. Yes, that means it's time for you to take a break. Saying things like, I can't go and spend time with my friend until I've lost weight. Or, for example, I can't move or go anywhere until I am, until I'm done taking this particular medication. It's always finding reasons to stay back, to be held back. being your own worst enemy. Perfectionism, procrastination all fall in that category. Feeling like you can't do anything until it's perfect. I even thought about this when putting together this presentation. I thought to myself, I can't do this until it's absolutely perfect. And then I realized, you know what? Nothing will ever be perfect. Go forward, do what you have to do, and make it work. And sometimes we are held back by our own feelings, even imposter syndrome, which means that you believe that you don't belong in the room that you're in. Absolutely, you do. But guess what? You have to take the time to move forward and to step to that table or create your own table. So self-sabotage can be a barrier. And I want you to keep that in mind as well. And think to yourself, how am I sabotaging? Why is it that I refuse to ask for help or support? You know, what is causing me not to want to take my medication? Why don't I want to see a therapist or seek someone to speak to about how I'm feeling? Those are the things that I want you to think about. And then also the superhero and savior behaviors. Desiring to be everything to everyone. And so sometimes, and this goes along with self-sabotage, we ignore our own needs to help others. Notice I said ignore. There's nothing wrong with helping others, but when you ignore your own needs, wants, and desires, this can lead to burnout, resentment, and chronic stress. So there's acute stress, which is temporary stress, like when you're working on a project. And then there's chronic stress. So I want you to keep that in mind too, is that those superheroes, savior behaviors, think about Superwoman, Wonder Woman, or Superman, or Iron Man, desiring to be everything to everyone, they all faced a huge dilemma. And while that huge dilemma helped them to grow, you realize that you also have to think about you too and your own personal development. We can't be everything to everyone. Now then also, there are external barriers to mental health. Living in COVID-19, for example. A whole new world, a new normal, more questions and answers, uncertainty. There was so much going on. We had to quickly make adjustments in a whole new world. We had zero control over how coronavirus moved. What we had control over was our response. Hand sanitizer, having to wash our hands, making sure we're socially distancing. All of those things very important. And it's another layer, particularly when you're living and thriving with an autoimmune disease such as lupus. As a lupus thriver, you also had to think about, okay, now there's this, I need an extra level of protection, right? And so those are some external barriers, right, to mental health. Because when you're already living with lupus, then you're also having to live in a world that is battling COVID-19. That may have brought fear, anxiety. You may have been tuning into the 24-hour news cycle, grieving old ways of life. Perhaps you experienced isolation, not being able to see your family. That could have caused all kinds of turmoil. And a lot of times we're also concerned for our loved ones, for their health and safety. And so living in COVID-19 in 2020 has been a new frontier, a whole new world for all of us. And we've had to adjust. But it's also been a barrier to mental health because on top of a layer of living with lupus, then also is living in COVID-19 and wondering how even contracting COVID may impact you or impact your family, your way of life, your support system, your job, all of those things. Also, I want to talk a bit about unhealthy connections. Now, I want you to list the 5 people that you are most connected to. The 5 people that you are most connected to. Because I know COVID, we had to change our strategy. A lot of things have gone online and gone virtual. But I want you to list the 5 people that you're most connected to. And then after you list that, see, I'm going to have all kinds of exercises for you to do as we go through. As you list those, I want you to ask yourself, are these connections life-giving or life-stealing? Life-giving or life-stealing? Do they support you, give you energy, make you feel alive? Or do they just steal the life out of you, make you just feel, you're out of gas, right? And I want you to ask yourself, once you figure out if your connections are life-giving or life-stealing, I want you to ask yourself why. What are some reasons why these particular people and these connections are life-giving or life-stealing? And then I want you to even go further and ask yourself this: how am I contributing to this connection? How am I contributing to this connection? And one more thing: what do I really want from my connection? What are my expectations? Okay? Because unhealthy connections, including romance and dating, and I know we're in a different world with dating apps and just having to talk to people about your condition. Talk to people that you're interested in. Talk to coworkers or colleagues or human resources, right? And so this is a world in which it can sometimes be difficult to be vocal. But I also want to caution you to really look at your connections and ask yourself, do I need to be here, or do I need to remove myself or take a break? Particularly connections that are continually, recurrently stressing you out. No, ma'am, no, sir. Okay? So I want you to think about that, because unhealthy connections are a barrier to your mental health. Another thing that's important also is resource scarcity, okay? Because without resources and support, we may feel a sense of trying to build a home without walls, or driving a car without gas. That's why it's so important that you're connected to the Lupus Foundation of America, and you're connected to the Lupus Foundation of America North Carolina chapter. Because now we get to look at how to get support and resources. Now, a lot of people who have been diagnosed don't know where to go, don't know who to turn to. Maybe they've gotten a bunch of medication and don't know how to take it or in what order. Perhaps it's been hard in terms of just getting the financial or emotional support needed. And so it's so important to look at all of these variables and to know that even in resource scarcity, and we can even speak on that in a cultural standpoint, knowing that women of color in particularly are disproportionately impacted by lupus. Resource scarcity, and that means lack of resources, can create an environment for people to feel isolated, depressed, and grieve their previous life. So just as we talk about COVID and grieving the old way of life, sometimes when we don't have the resources and we lack the knowledge for what's going on, then therefore there is a sense of grieving the life we once led. And so I want to make sure to point that out, because there have been many different studies that have talked about that as well. It's the idea of making sure that you have resources. So again, I'm so glad that you're tuned in to this virtual conference and going forward. This is excellent. Thank you for this. Now, here we go with the 7 solutions for mental wellness. I've talked about the barriers, internal and external. Let's talk about some solutions. Why don't we? Okay, let's journey forward. I'm going to give you 7 solutions. Let's power through this. All right. Now, number 1 is become more meaningful and mindful. Meaningfulness is a hallmark Mindfulness is a hallmark. The more you do, the better it gets. That means you have to be intentional about looking within and self-awareness. So I love this quote from Emily Smith, who is the author of The Power of Meaning, Crafting a Life That Matters. Because research has shown that having purpose and meaning in life increases overall well-being and life satisfaction. It improves mental and physical health. It enhances resiliency, which means the ability to bounce back. It enhances self-esteem, and it decreases the chances of depression. I think that's awesome, because I truly, truly, truly believe that when you live a more meaningful and mindful life, you will see some benefit. So let's talk about some of them. Becoming more meaningful and mindful. Look at the picture, right? When I look at this picture and I see the beach and the sand, it takes me somewhere. That's the power of visualization. Sometimes we don't even sit down and take time to breathe. Or if we sit down and take time to breathe, we're scrolling on our cell phones or maybe even feeling bad about the way life may be going. It's those times where we have to stir ourselves up to look at ways to be meaningful and mindful. That means even in your bed, if you're sick or if you don't feel well, if you're tired, I want you to work on a few things. Okay? So grounding and guided meditation, very, very important. And one of the best ways to ground yourself is the 5-4-3-2-1 grounding technique. So let me talk about that for just a second. When you begin the 5-4-3-2-1 grounding technique, what you've got to do is you got to breathe, right? And I'm talking about a deep breath in. And then let it out. And then I want you to focus on the 5 things that you can see, the 4 things that you can feel, and I want you to wiggle your toes if you can. If you're sitting in a chair, I want you to literally feel your body in that chair, right? So the 4 things you can feel, okay? Then I want you to focus on the 3 things that you can hear, okay? So we've done 5 things that you can see, 4 things that you can feel, 3 things that you can hear, and that can be the sound of your tummy, that can be the sound of traffic outside, or maybe it's the sound of the birds chirping, okay? And so I want you to say those 3 things out loud. And then 2 things that you can smell, right? Even if it's the smell of your coffee or the smell of the soap you used this morning. Perhaps there was something you put on, or maybe there's a smell of something cooking in the kitchen, right? I want you to think about that as well. And then number 1 is what you can taste. That may have been the dinner you just ate. That might have been the breakfast you had. It might be the toothpaste, but something that you can taste. So I think that that's huge. That's very, very important. And I want you to think toward that as you're looking at the 5-4-3-2-1 technique. Okay, that helps you to become more meaningful and more mindful. Also, having a connection to faith. Faith being, believing there's something bigger, believing that there's more, believing and trusting that there's more here than just you. Having that connection can ground you as well. So, so important. And I'm going to give you another assignment. A lot of times we talk about gratitude journals, and I find that clients of mine, sometimes they don't necessarily do their homework and do the gratitude journal. So I want you to focus on that gratitude journal, but in a different way. Instead of just writing what you're grateful for the day, for the next 7 days, I want you to record. And yes, you have a record function on your cell phone. I've got my cell phone right here. I want you to record yourself speaking out loud the things that you're grateful for, the people that you're grateful for, the specific things in that day that you're grateful for. Even if you can't remember all of the things that happened, come up with one. Record yourself and make sure you keep it. And then after the 7 days, I want you to go back and listen to what you said. Will you do that for me? I know you will. I'm giving you a thumbs up because I already knew you're going to do the work. And you'll probably email me once you've done it just to let me know, hey, Dr. Joy, I did it. I'm looking forward to that. Another thing that's important is affirmations. I am well, I am whole, I am loved, I am worthy of being here, right? Writing down things that are meaningful. Sometimes you have to write them down and rehearse them so that your mind will begin to believe them. And then there is something strong about the pause. There's something strong about taking time to pause. Taking time to truly pause. That pause is essential. It actually is something that we don't do enough of. Just taking time for yourself. It's essential. And it's something that I believe is encouraging to others as they see you pause. As they see you stop, turn off the TV, turn off the phone even, and just pause. I think that's incredible. Like right now, just take a pause for just a few seconds. Wasn't so hard, was it? But those few seconds can become a minute, and that minute can become 5 minutes, and that 5 minutes can become 15, and that 15 minutes can become 30. So guess what? To become more meaningful and mindful, you got to take time to pause. That gives you time for self-awareness, and that's essential, along with authentic acknowledgement. And that's not burying your head in the sand. I'm all for a beach, but not burying your head in the sand. I got to have on my sunblock and all that good stuff, right? Not just going to the beach, not staying out there forever, but I got to have on my sunblock, right? And I may stay out there a little bit, right? But I'm not talking about burying your head in the sand. Acknowledging where you are is one of the key ways to figuring out where you want to be. So, number one is becoming more meaningful and mindful. That's one of the solutions for mental wellness. Now let's look at solution 2, which is being intentional about healthy connection. I can't say enough about that. If you can only take 3 people to a deserted island with you, who would they be? Who would they be, and why would you take them? Something to write down. If you can only take 3 now, you're not one of the 3. You can't clone yourself and make 3 more like you. Okay, the goal is to look at the people in your life and determine which 3 you would take. Okay, and then I want you to also think about this. How do you demonstrate every day that you're in a healthy relationship with yourself? That's something else to keep in mind. See, look at the chart that's on your right. Healthy relationships versus unhealthy, whether it's friends, family, coworkers, boyfriend, girlfriend, partner in some sort of way, or you're married, or you're even looking at a relationship with yourself. Do you compliment? Are you forgiving? Do you appreciate your partner? Do you appreciate yourself, right? Do you respect yourself and respect others? Are you willing to compromise? Do you encourage, trust, support, communicate, validate others' experiences? And do you do those things for yourself? Because if you do them for yourself, it's easier to extend that empathy and that health towards others. But if you are experiencing unhealthy relationships, and that includes unhealthy relationships with yourself, you begin to see the criticizing, the grudge holding, the sense of resentment or disrespect, insult, distrust. Unhealthy relationships aren't always abusive. It's not the same. But they can become abusive. They can become dangerous. And it's very important for you to look at who is in your life and be intentional about healthy connection. Who is your safe space? And I think this is very, very important for all of us to think about. Who is my safe space? And where are the toxic people in my life? If there are any, what do I need to do to address it? This is something that's important. This is a solution for your mental wellness. Number 2. And number 3, setting and maintaining boundaries is huge. Dr. Cloud is one of the foremost leaders in talking about maintaining boundaries. And I believe when you talk about maintaining boundaries, you let your yes be yes and your no be no. Dr. Cloud says boundaries define us. They define what is me and what isn't me. A boundary shows me where I end and someone else begins. It leads me to a sense of ownership. Boundaries represent our responsibilities and our responsibility for ourselves and to another. Taking ownership teaches us when to say yes, when to say no, and to take control of our life. So I think this is really interesting as we look at some things. I want to talk for a minute about boundaries for self. Now, turning off social media, right? Some of us could scroll all night long, but perhaps we need to turn off social media by a certain time. 9 p.m., 10 p.m. For some people, it may be a little earlier. I also challenge you to find one day a week that is just for you. One self-care day of at least 8 hours where you can have some alone time. Now, some of you who are taking care of families, you may have to break that up into 4 hours here, 4 hours there. But you can do that. I want you to find the time to take some self-care day or days for yourself. Also, another boundary for self is setting out your clothes the night before. One of the ways we continue to stress ourselves is by not planning ahead. And that really can stunt our growth. And then there's boundaries for others. And with this, Dr. Cloud says, we can't manipulate people into swallowing our boundaries by sugarcoating them. That means we don't want to sugarcoat anything. Boundaries are a litmus test for the qualities of our relationships. Those people in our lives who can respect our boundaries will love our wills, our opinions, and our separateness, even if they disagree, right? That's important to keep in mind. Those who can't respect our boundaries are telling us they don't love our no's. They only love our yeses and our compliance. I only like it when you do what I want. That's not okay. So when it's time to set boundaries, right, I really want you to think about how you set them. Thanks so much for the invite. I won't be able to make it today. Maybe next time. And in the midst of COVID-19, here's another boundary I think is very important because some of us may be going out and feeling uncomfortable. That place is generally crowded, and I am not comfortable going there right now. You don't have to explain. You have to be okay with saying what you said. I have some suggestions for other places we can go. I think that's important too. And then I want you to, when there are challenging conversations to be had, think about setting a time for those challenging conversations, setting the stage, and then taking notes about what it is you need to say or want to say. We can't control what someone else is going to say to us, but we can at least think ahead about some things we want to say. Because sometimes we go into challenging conversations without having thought about it. Even when it's time to go to the doctor, make sure you have your list of questions. When it's time to visit a therapist, make sure you are talking about some of the things that you find important and critical. That's a part of setting and maintaining boundaries. And there are benefits because it improves our self-esteem, it improves our confidence, it conserves our energy, and it increases our feelings of independence when you set boundaries. You're not a doormat. So that's something to keep in mind. Focus on what you can control. You know when you like to party, but you also got to know when to rest. And by party, I don't just mean going out. That's not what I mean. But when you're up and feeling good, right? You may be having a personal party. But too much of that can lead to feelings of exhaustion and fatigue. So we have to measure that. And that's why setting and maintaining boundaries helps to improve mental health. Number 4, setting and working towards goals gives life meaning. And I'm not just talking about any goals. I'm talking about SMART goals. SMART goals are specific. They're measurable. That means I can measure them. So specific means not general. Oh, I want to lose weight. Specific may be, I would like to make sure I walk 15 minutes every day. Okay? Specific. Measurable. How will you measure that? Right? Is it by a calendar? Is it on your Fitbit? How is it? Are these goals achievable, relevant to you and to the environment you're in now? And are they timely? Okay. Is there a time? I want to be able to meet the goal of walking in my home, walking 3 times a week for 90 days. Setting and working towards goals gives life meaning. And so all of your goals should be SMART goals. Now, we also break up goals into short-term, mid-term, and long-term. And so I think that that's very, very important. Now, when we set goals, we have entered the realm of growth mindset. And I love that. When we go through health challenges such as lupus flares that can keep you off balance, we wonder sometimes if it's okay to set goals. Oh, it's okay to set goals. It's more than okay. You have to give yourself permission to do so. But we tend to look towards the past and what we used to do instead of looking at the present and looking forward. That's where that mindfulness and meaningfulness comes in, looking at the present, and then setting goals means looking forward. We can make adjustments toward the future and what we can do. Sometimes we tend to look at what we can't do. But in health, in social, in family, in finances, in education, in personal development, you can set goals. And I believe in you. I believe in the power of setting goals and making an effort to do so in many different dimensions of your life, because it does help you gain focus on purpose and life meaning. Sometimes our focus goes to what's wrong. Let's focus on what's going right and what we want to do ahead, even when it feels hard to look forward and you're in a challenging space. So we've talked about 4 life solutions. Now we hit 5. Prioritize your wellness. Prioritize your wellness. And on this page, I've highlighted the most important words. According to the Global Wellness Institute, wellness is associated with an active process of being aware and making choices that lead towards an outcome of optimal holistic health and well-being. On one end, a lot of people who experience poor health have to engage with doctors, specialists, right? That's important, right? Because when you're engaging with a doctor, you're treating an illness. So you have an illness episode, you go to a doctor. But on the other end is the preventative wellness, the proactive activity towards your wellness, adopting attitudes and lifestyles that prevent you from experiencing certain things that can improve health and enhance your quality of life. So wellness means prioritizing self-care. Wellness means doing something you love. Wellness means taking a drive somewhere. Just getting out, getting some fresh air. Wellness means connecting with friends and family and not isolating yourself, even when it's hard. Even a text, and even though I'm not a fan of texting, I like to get on the phone or get on video. Even texting is connecting. I think that rhymed, right? So sometimes you got to take a mental health day from work or from school or just from everything that's going on. That's okay too. You've got to be your number one priority sometimes. Also, wellness can be eating a meal that sustains you, not starving yourself or not getting in enough water. That's very, very important, okay? And then number 6, I want you to consider this. Whenever you have a problem with your sink or your toilet, you call the plumber. Whenever you have a problem with, something with your washer and dryer, you call someone to come and fix it. Whenever you have a tire blowout, you call the company or AAA or some other car care company that can come and give you roadside assistance. What's different about mental health therapy? When you're not feeling your best, you're feeling worried, you're feeling sad, grieving, you're feeling loneliness, you need support, you should, as a solution for mental wellness, consider mental health therapy to help develop coping skills and process stuck points. Mental health therapy is excellent. Therapy is not a weakness. Going to see a therapist is not a weakness. And I want to tell you why. It is non-judgmental. It provides support and perspective. It's a strength. It helps you to dismantle all of the toxic thoughts that you may be having. I'm worthless, I'm nothing, I'm nobody. It helps you dismantle all those patterns that you may be repeating habitually. In mental health, clients have the ability to say anything without fear of judgment or rejection. A lot of times we think that someone's judging us, but in the therapeutic room, it is non-judgmental. And so it's a great place of support. Also, learning coping and communication skills is essential. That's what mental health therapy can give you. It can help you to get unstuck from those thoughts or those behaviors that have been plaguing you for so long. And also, mental health therapy supports the mind-body connection, which I talked about earlier. So we've covered this. It's important to look at this. Therapy's cool. It's when we're doing something for ourselves, then we're growing. We talk about, I did my YouTube workout. I got in my 10,000 steps. But we never really say much about how happy we are that we started therapy or that therapy has been beneficial. How many people really do that? We should start doing that. #therapy is cool. And number 7, speak up and use your voice. One of my favorite people, Marshawn Evans Daniels, always says, speak what you seek until you see what you've said. And it seems simple. All around the country, we've seen people young and old speaking up for issues that matter. How are you showing up for yourself? How are you speaking up for yourself? That also determines your mental health. When you hold things inside, it creates a vortex that can cause all kinds of unhealthy physical manifestations. But when you speak up with your family, friends, with your doctors, when you say, hey, I don't understand, or I don't like how this is going, I want to look at some additional kinds of help or support. Or, hey, I need support. Or, helping others to understand what you're going through. You have to speak up and use your voice. We get overwhelmed by people's opinions of us or opinions about other things. But when you speak up, you are using your voice and using it proudly. I think that's important. Find your voice. You said inner inside and use it. It may take you a while to get to a point where you're more vocal. But the more vocal you are, the better that you will see those growth mindset outcomes come out. So speak what you see until you see what you've said. Those are the 7 solutions for mental wellness that I offer to you humbly today. Become more meaningful and mindful. Be intentional about healthy connection. Set and maintain boundaries. You got to have them. Set and work towards goals, right? Prioritize wellness. Consider mental health therapy, particularly when you're experiencing emotional distress. Sometimes we want to go to friends and family, and they give pretty good advice sometimes and sometimes not. But sometimes it's great to talk to an outside person who knows nothing about you because they have a different perspective. And then number 7 is use your voice and speak up. Use your voice and speak up. Those are my 7 solutions for mental wellness. Now, I think it's important, as we wrap up, that I tell you a little story. It's not a little story. It's a little big story. Once upon a time, there was this young woman. She was living her young girl life, young lady, professional in the city. I wasn't a young girl, young lady. 2005, me, gets diagnosed with lupus. My world changed. But like some of you, I wasn't really able to process what was happening. Everything was kind of happening so fast. Now, thank goodness, I had a lot of support and a team of doctors and all kinds of people that were able to assist and talk with me. But it was all a blur, even then, about what I was to do, who I was. Here I was, 24 years old, and not knowing what was going to happen to me. I had so many dreams, goals, and I thought to myself, how is this going to change? But I kept going, and some days were better than others. Yeah, I dated. That was a lot. Yes, I went to school. But I never stopped putting one foot in front of the other. At times, it was really painful, sad. It was challenging, and I had a smile on my face, and people would say, but you don't look sick, right? But that girl in 2005 who took this picture in the hospital, that girl had no idea what was ahead for her. I never knew I'd be here with you, sharing about mental health. I didn't know where I was headed. People would say and make all kinds of statements. Eat this, try that. Don't eat meat, don't do this. Eat this, try this, da-da-da, da-da-da. And all I wanted was my normal life. The one where you think about maybe having a husband, 2.5 kids, and the dog. Back then, that was one of the statements we used to say. I just want a husband, 2.5 kids, and a dog, a white house with a picket fence, that kind of thing. Really, actually, it's probably more of a condo right near Starbucks in the city. But anyway, I digress. I graduated from one of the top public universities in the country, and I knew so much was ahead for me. The thing was that when I was diagnosed, it was almost like seeing in the dark, trying to feel your way around a world in the dark. And I had to set some goals and figure out what to do next with my life. Now, I could talk about all the different things. We don't have time for that today because there are so many other great presenters and speakers that I'm sure you're going to hear from. But I want to fast forward to 2017. 12 years after my diagnosis, I received my PhD. And it's interesting because my PhD and really my master's thesis and work as well was with women who experienced a delayed diagnosis to systemic lupus. I wanted to hear the stories of women from across the country who were experiencing or had experienced a delayed diagnosis. I wanted to hear their stories. So here I am getting hooded as a PhD on the stage in 2017, 3 years ago, having done the work, not just the PhD work, not just writing a dissertation, but having to do some inner work so I could see some light, because I have been seeing in the dark. And for some of you out there, you've been trying to feel your way around in the dark, trying to get back to who you were. But let's talk about who you are now. That's so important. Who you are now and who you want to be, where you want to be. Your life is not over. It's just beginning. And for the caregivers out there, I want you to think about that too. Sometimes we grieve who we were, but now we can celebrate who we are, scars and all. Once upon a time, there was a young woman, but today there is a professional who has a PhD, a private practice, and still has battles and challenges with systemic lupus, who is still putting one foot in front of the other, no matter how hard it gets, to make sure that before I leave this earth, I make a difference. Now, of course, there's going to be a happily ever after in one way or another. And I extend that to you. Your happily ever after may not be like a Disney movie, but it certainly has the ability to leave a legacy and make a lasting impact. I believe that for you, just as I believe it for myself. Now, I've included some resources for the journey ahead, some apps, Mindshift, Sam, Happify, Mood Tools, Breathe to Relax, Calm, and Headspace. Some lines that you can call and chat with, even our local lupus foundation located in Charlotte that you can call and get information, support, and resources. Podcasts that you can listen to. I'm not going to talk about my own podcast because I don't want to toot my own horn. Toot, toot. But for those of you who are single out there and you need something to listen to about mental health and public health, my bestie and I also have a podcast called Challenge Yourself. But I want to highlight these that are specifically on mental health: The Happiness Lab, Feel Better, Live More, The Dark Place, The Hilarious World of Depression, and The Friend Zone. as really great podcasts, and then websites. If you're looking for a clinician, you can always talk with the people at Lupus Foundation of America North Carolina chapter. You can look at Psychology Today and look in your area and find a therapist that you believe will work best with you. To find a mental health clinician in your area, and if you need virtual sessions, then that's fine. Also, for those of you who are teens all the way up to 25, you can visit teenmentalhealth.org. Calmclinic.com is also a resource for those of you who want to learn about decreasing that anxiety, right? Like the exercise we did at the beginning. And then also for girls of color, there's therapyforblackgirls.com. Anyone can use that, but I just want to make sure that those who are disproportionately affected by systemic lupus also know that there are additional resources as well. It's very important in the days that we live in now. Okay? Strengthening our mental health is not a destination, it's a journey. And so I feel like these are some great resources for the journey ahead. And I want to remind you, every mountain seems formidable until someone climbs it. I want you to take it one step at a time towards your healthy mind and a healthy you. Healthy mind, healthy you. To me, that's a whole new world. And so how do you connect with Dr. Joy? Because of course you want to, right? I'm a mental health therapist. I'm a speaker. I'm a self-sabotage solutionist. Yes. I'm a strategist. I'm an author. I own my private practice, The Welling Place, and have owned it for almost 3 years now. You can reach me at drjoy, D-R-J-O-Y, at wellingplace.com. That's my email. And my phone number is 910-759-3031. Connect with me. Reach out to me. Let me know that you received my resources. Let me know how you felt about this presentation, what you took away. And I want to remind you, a healthy you begins with you. No one else, you. And we can, with support and resources, we can all do this together, and we're in this together. Even when you feel alone and isolated, you and we are in this together. I want to thank the Lupus Foundation North Carolina chapter for this opportunity to present at the Lupus Summit. And I want to thank all of you out there, whether you're listening live or on the replay, for listening, for taking the time. For all the caregivers, I want to thank you. For my lupus thrivers, I want to thank you. I want to thank you all and to let you know that you are worth it, you are worthy, and you are a warrior. Again, I'm Dr. Joy McNeil, and it's been my pleasure to present Healthy Mind, Healthy You, 7 solutions for mental wellness. Thank you so much again, and have a great morning, noonday, or night whenever you listen. Take care.